Alright, welcome back to part 6 of this tutorial on how to make an asteroids game using GameMaker. In this part we will be learning how to make these asteroids, and we will get it so that once they're shot they start breaking down into smaller pieces down to dust and ultimately fade away. And you see we'll get them all different sizes and shapes and different scales, and they will be rotating as shown on the screen as you see. Alright, we're going to start as normal with creating a sprite for this asteroid. So we're just going to go over to sprites here, right click and go create. We're going to go ahead and import, and now this time I want to make I'm going to import two images at the same time here to make our asteroid. Now we are ultimately going to make sprites for all of our asteroids here, but to start off with, we're just going to worry about the large one right now. So I'm going to just select these two. You click on one, hold the control key down on your keyboard, and click the other one so that they're both selected like this. And then you just click open, and you will see now that our sprite has now loaded both of these images for use with this sprite. And then we want to center them. And let's go ahead and name it SPR asteroid, and I'm going to put up a little suffix on there, LG. That's because we're going to have three sizes of asteroid. So again, SPR asteroid LG, and I capitalized the L on LG. That's an important note to remember when it comes time to do programming. So again, make sure it's centered. You got these two sub images here. Okay, the next thing we want to do is we want to make an object for this fellows here. So we're going to go to objects here, right click, and excuse me, I had a little glitch here, but we're back on track here. So we want to, now we've created our sprite, so now we want to create the object for the asteroid. So I'm going to right click and go create, and we're going to name this guy just object asteroid. We are going to use the same object for all our asteroids regardless of the size. The sprite we want to use is the only one we've got here, the asteroid sprite. Okay, so we get that set. And then what we want to do is just simply put him in the room at this point so you can see what kind of things we have to do. And a lot of times you have to do this just to see what needs to be done here. So I'm going to drag an asteroid in the room, and I'm going to play the game. And you'll see first off we've got a big problem with this asteroid, the way it's designed here. Since it has two sprites, you see that it is alternating between those two sprites. So that's our first problem we have to solve. So if we go back to the object for it, let me expand everything here. And we're going to add an event in the create event. Excuse me, let me get this arranged a little bit better. Add event, create event. And what this is going to do, we're going to use this to set up some of our variables to keep that sort of thing from happening. Alright, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just simply retitle my description here to set variables. And again, this part is optional, but it helps later on when you're trying to debug the system. If you're having problems, this will work. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is, first of all, I want it to stop cycling through that subimage, so I'm going to use the, I got to go to the next line here. Image underscore speed controls how fast the object cycles through its subimage. So if I do not want it to cycle through its subimages, I'm just going to put 0. Okay, so image speed equals 0. I'm sorry, forgot to zoom this in here. Alright, image speed equals 0. Alright, that stops it from cycling through its subimages. Then the next thing I want to do is I want to have it pick from among those two subimages here. So the variable that controls which subimage is shown is called image index. And we want it to randomly choose between the two that we have. So we can just go choose, and then in parentheses we've got two choices. We either got subimage 0 or we've got subimage 1. Now the reason I choose 0 or 1 is that in GameMaker the subimages are labeled that way. If you go to the sprite here, this is subimage 1, this is subimage 2. Or they call them frames here, and it gets a little bit confusing, but in computer programming most of the times when they start counting things, they count starting with 0 instead of 1. So that's why this is frame 1 and this is, or frame 0, I'm sorry, and this is frame 1. Okay, so back to our programming. So now what this code does here is it randomly chooses between 0 and 1. So now when we play our game, you'll see that our asteroid, sometimes it's that one, and sometimes it is the other one. Actually, let me go a better way to demonstrate that. Let me go to the room, and I'm going to put several asteroids in there. If I just hold the Alt key, select the asteroid, hold the Alt key down, and I'll put a bunch in there, and I'll play it. Okay, so you see that, oh, well, by random chance, most of them turned out to be the 1, but you see there's one outlier like this. If I restart the game, you'll see that different ones will be different sizes. Okay, see, now we've got another random display here. They're all different, so that makes it a little bit more random, but we can make them look even more random with a few other lines of code here. If we go to the object here, expand all this stuff, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make these all different sizes. So to start that off, I'm going to create a variable called scale, and I'm going to pick a random number, so a random range between 0.5 and 1. And what this does is basically going to give me a random number between 50% and 100%. And I'm going to use that to resize all of my sprites here. So the way I do that is image x scale equals scale, image y scale equals scale. Okay. Now what this does when I play the game, now you'll see that all of them are of, oh, got an error. Oh, look at this. See, I capitalized scale there, but I did not capitalize it here. So let's fix that. Okay, now let's try it. See, the spelling will get you every time, guys, so you got to watch out. Okay, now notice all of my asteroids are of different sizes here. The sizes have slightly changed somewhat. Okay. Now I can further vary them up by doing this. If I go, instead of just scale, I can go choose, and I can go scale, negative scale. And I can do the same for the y-axis. And what this does, see, I'm just copying and paste this, is it says, well, this causes it to flip, or maybe flip, maybe not flip. It'll equal chance that not only will it be smaller now, it will be flipped either horizontally or vertically. So now if we go and play the game, you'll see our asteroids. Some are flipped in different ways here. You see this one and this one are flipped opposite of each other. This one and this one are flipped opposite of each other. So as you can see, we're starting to get more and more variation the more that we play with this. We can add even more variation by including this. Image underscore angle equals random 360. And what that does now is it turns them as well at a random angle. See, now they're all kind of turned at different other angles, and it gives just more and more variation. Alright, what we're also going to do, they look a little static there, so we are going to get them to move a little bit now too. First thing we're going to do is going to get them to spin. And the way we do that is we're going to create a variable called spin, and this is just going to tell it how fast it will spin. How many degrees it will turn every step. Random range, and then the reason I'm using random range is just to give it some variability. 3, and I'm using -3 and 3 so that some will spin counterclockwise, some will spin clockwise. If it picks a negative number, it will spin clockwise. If it picks a positive number, which means it'll increase the angle every step, it will turn counterclockwise. So, okay, now the spin itself here won't do anything. All this does is says how much it's gonna spin. In order to do that, we are going to add another event. We're going to be step. And in the description here, I'm going to put, there we go, spin, and zoom up here again, and all we're simply going to do is just make it spin. And the code that's going to do that is we're going to go image underscore angle plus equals spin. Okay, make sure you've spelled spin exactly as you did before. So we now play here. You'll see now they're all spinning. Some are spinning fast, some are spinning slow. And if you don't like the speed of that, if that's too fast spinning, then you can just simply go over to the create event and change these to, let's go 2 and 2. And play it again, and you can see it'll overall they'll be spinning at a slower rate. Okay. Now the last bit of fun we need is to get them to actually just move. And we are going to use in the create event, so if you're not already in the create event, make sure you're in the create event. We're going to add another function that will make them move. We're going to do, instead of setting direction and speed like we've done in other things, this is another way to do that. It does the same exact thing. Motion set, and as before, whenever you're doing a function here, you can look down here and see, okay, what is it asking for? So we want to give it a random direction. So I'm going to just type that random 360. This will give it a random direction. Whoops. And then I put a comma. Now it's asking for speed, and I want a random speed. I don't want all of them moving at the same speed, so I'm going to use fairly low number because I don't want them moving too fast, so I'm just going to go random 2. So it's going to pick a speed from anywhere from 0 to 2 pixels per step. Okay. And this is the same as, this line is the same as doing direction equal. You don't do this part. I'm just demonstrating random 360 speed equals random 2. These two lines of this line of code on line 9 here is the same as doing lines 10 and 11. It's just a different method of doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that, and we'll play the game and you will see how they go. Okay, so now they move. Alright, now problem is once they go off the screen, they are never heard from again. Okay, so we're going to do one little last thing to get them so that they wrap. Alright, if you remember from the ship object, we had in the step event, we had this code right here. Let me zoom out and resize this so we can see it a little bit better here. We had this bunch of code right here that we used to get our ship to wrap screen. Well, fortunately we've already typed this, so we don't have to type it all again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of this. So I'm going to highlight it with my cursor, make sure you get past that part down there, and notice I want to include this wrap screen label here. If you have it, please include that. So I'm going to go ahead and copy it, just go Control C on the keyboard, and I'm going to go to my asteroid, and I'm going to go to the step event. Let me zoom in here, go to the step event, and I'm going to go down a couple of lines there and hit paste. So you see now we're using the exact same code in the asteroid that we used in the ship. Okay. Now I'm going to make a couple of changes up here, and I'm going to change the description to spin and wrap, and then above this spin part I'm going to include a description here. Spin asteroid. So this, if I come back and I find a problem and something's not working right, this will help me identify which section of this code does what. Okay. Now in the ship object, this will not work by itself because we've got some variable here that we have to deal with here. In the ship object, in the create event, you remember we had this code sprite size that figures out the maximum. What's the size of our sprite? Is it bigger? Is it wider or taller? And this is what we need. So we need this variable. We need this line of code here. I'm going to copy it. And notice I'm going to start from the line above it, at the end of the line above it, and just select the end of it. What this does is when I go to the asteroids and I go to the create event, I can just go to the end here, click on the end, and then Control V to paste it. Let me expand this a little bit so we can see the whole code. Now the only difference we have to make here, we have to add one little thing to the sprite width and sprite height variables here, because the remember we made our scale possibly be backwards or a negative value. So what ends up happening is that could throw these calculations off, trying to figure out which one's the larger value, because even though it may be wider, if it's a negative value, it's going to end up giving you a negative number for the sprite size, which is going to mess up the calculations for the jump, for the wrap screen. So to fix that problem, what we do is we just say, okay, we want the absolute value. So you type in ABS and then put the sprite width in parentheses like this. And what this does is this gives you the absolute value, which is the value the distance from 0 basically on a number line. If it's a -5, this gives you 5. If it's -32, which ours could be in some situations, this makes it 32. So we do the same thing over at this side. ABS, and then put that in parentheses as well. You got to make sure you got the right number of parentheses. I'll leave that up on the screen there for a second. So again, so now it becomes sprite size equals max. ABS stands for absolute sprite width, comma, absolute sprite height. So it's going to find the larger of those two. Okay. So now let's test it, and our asteroids should now wrap screen. There they go. Now it looks like our asteroids are going pretty fast right now, and you also notice that nothing happens when we shoot them. That will be in our next video. We will get that to happen. But meanwhile here, I'm going to slow down my asteroids here for a second. I'm just going to make this a random 1 here for the speed. Motion set, random 1, and see if that works a little bit better. You don't want to make your asteroids so fast that you can't outrun them. There you go. That looks better. Okay. All right, we'll see you in the next video, where we will learn to get the asteroids to break apart as they get shot.